last para of the chapter, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Rangada.
Yeah. So we'll read that and then go on to Sankhya, Yoga and Vedanta. Okay. So this is a little bit philosophical. After that, it becomes all pure Gita. How to purify yourself, how to reach the Brahman consciousness and all that. Okay. So I'm reading. No, we have to read it, na?
Yes, Rangada.
Okay. So one of you has to read. Today, Sunki, will you read?
Yes, I will read.
Go ahead, read it.
Such is an analysis, not confining itself, but penetrating into the occult secret of superconscious nature, Uttamam Rahasyam, by which the Gita founds its synthesis of Vedanta, Sankhya, and Yoga, its synthesis of knowledge, works, and devotion. By the pure Sankhya alone, the combining of works and liberation is contradictory and impossible. By pure monism alone, the permanent continuation of works as a part of yoga and the indulgence of devotion after perfect knowledge and liberation and union are attained, become impossible or at least irrational and osseous. The Sankhya knowledge of the Gita dissipates and the yoga system of the Gita triumphs over all these obstacles.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a very small one. He's telling you how the Vedanta, Sankhya, Yoga, they are all different systems and different aims. And the Gita is combining all this. That's why, if you remember, very early on, he has told us that the Gita is a synthetic. It's a synthetic, it's a synthesis of many. Many of the systems are not synthetic. For instance, the Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Karma Yoga to a certain extent, but Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga are not synthetic. They are very, very exclusive. Jnana Yoga wants only knowledge of the divine. Okay, if other love and devotion come, very good, but the main aim is knowledge. And in Bhakti Yoga, the main aim is devotion, love, and intimacy with the divine. If knowledge comes, well and good, it can come, but that's not the aim. So now he is saying that the Gita, the aim is synthetic. Okay, so such is the analysis of the Sankhya philosophy, not confining itself to the apparent cosmic process by penetrating into the occult secrets of superconscious nature. Uttamam Rahasyam, the secrets of superconscious nature. Nature at the lower level, at our physical level, seems to be unconscious. Huh? We have discussed that many times. It seems to be mechanical. The wind is blowing, the river is flowing, okay? All seems to be mechanical. The tree is also growing. It seems to be mechanical. There are mechanical laws that operate. That's what physics is all about. Okay? So, but actually, there is consciousness hiding behind the apparent mechanicalness and unconsciousness. Okay? And that is the one that he is talking about, the superconscious nature. Superconscious nature is the para prakriti. As we have discussed many times, the highest is fully conscious, fully powerful, fully anandamaya. But when it comes down, all these things get reduced and diminished, and sometimes even seem to be the very opposite of all these things. Consciousness seems to become unconsciousness in the physical world, but it has only diminished itself. It is there behind this apparent unconsciousness, but there is a consciousness hiding there. Then the ananda also reduces itself and seems to become suffering, pain, okay? But actually behind that also it's a form of, it's a distortion of ananda. Exactly in the same way, the power also. The power is full at the higher level, and these are all para prakriti, the higher nature, super conscious nature. But when it comes down, it seems to become mechanical, unconscious nature. So, such is the analysis, not confining itself to the apparent cosmic process. Apparent cosmic process, body, mind, life. Okay, that's all. Apparent cosmic process. The cosmic process is limited only to the three levels. Okay, so, but penetrating into the occult secrets of superconscious nature, uttamam rahasyam, by which the Gita founds. It lays a foundation for its synthesis. What is it synthesizing? Vedanta, Sankhya, and Yoga. The Vedanta is the Advaita philosophy. The Sankhya is the um, this philosophy of Purusha and Prakriti and the three modes of nature. And Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. And Yoga is the, when they speak of Yoga in the Gita, it is actually Karma Yoga. Okay? So it's synthesis, and what is it combining? Synthesis of knowledge, synthesis of works, and synthesis of devotion. Okay? So this is what the Gita is doing. It is combining all. By the pure Sankhya alone, the combining of works and liberation is contradictory, because in the Sankhya, you are in Prakriti and you have to raise yourself and go into Purusha and reject Prakriti. In Sankhya, you have to reject Prakriti. Prakriti is mechanical, your body, mind, life, and it is full of suffering, limitations, perversions. So why do that? Okay. So this is very similar to the other systems, Jnana Yoga and Mayavadin. Okay, so you reject that. So pure Sankhya alone, combining of works and devotion, and liberation is contradictory and impossible. Then what about pure monism? Pure monism, Advaita. But Advaita, the later Advaita, not the earlier Advaita. Shraddha speaks of two Advaitas, two Vedantas. The earlier Vedanta is a Vedic period where there was no rejection of the physical world at all. Okay. We know that. Na? Heaven is my father and the earth is my mother. They included everything. Okay. And the Isha Upanishad is the best example of that. So pure monism alone, pure monism is the later one. Okay. In the revival of the Advaita philosophy Vedanta by Shankara. Of course, pure Shankara was misunderstood entirely because he used the word Maya. But so there you reject the physical world. Okay. So that is also pure monism alone, the permanent continuation of works as a part of yoga and the indulgence of devotion after perfect knowledge and liberation and union become impossible, or at least irrational and otiose. Okay, irrational because in Shankara there is knowledge, there is no doubt about it, but his verses, okay, are full of devotion. Wonderful slokas are there which are all full of devotion. So, but you don't need to. He's talking not of Shankara, but he's talking of pure monism. Pure monism is the Jnana Yoga. You reject the, even if it comes, you are not so interested in devotion and love of the divine. You are mainly interested in the knowledge aspect. Even after that comes, he's saying the other parts become irrational and otiose. Because why does love and intimacy get rejected by the Jnana Yoga? Because it is two. We want oneness. Okay, oneness is knowledge, but the love and devotion is dual. You can't love somebody without another person. So that's why it's a lesser level. So that's why irrational or otiose. That means otiose is useless, not at all necessary. The Sankhya knowledge of the Gita dissipates, makes it disappear. What? The difficulties of the Sankhya, it dissipates. Dissipates means makes less, dissolves. And the yoga system of the Gita triumphs over all these obstacles. So it changes Sankhya to suit itself, and it changes also the yoga to suit itself. That's what he's saying. Gita combines. And what is it combining? That's the next chapter. Sankhya, Yoga, and Vedanta. So, before we start reading that chapter, the new one, how it is combining, that's a chapter. Sankhya, Yoga, and Vedanta. So, when you talk of Sankhya philosophy, it is not the normal Sankhya, okay? It is the Gita Sankhya, where it accepts the Purusha Prakriti concept and it also accepts the Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. Okay. But it does not accept that Purusha and Prakriti are always separate. It does not accept. They combine and become one at the highest level. Then the term yoga. Yoga, when they are using, normally when you say yoga, it is Raj Yoga, and it also means the rejection of the physical world. But here in the Gita, yoga is used in the sense of karma yoga. Okay? You do works in the physical world. And Vedanta. Vedanta again, Advaita, only one reality, the physical world is not real and you reject it. But the Gita is managing to combine all these because it's all of these systems, they are exclusive. But Gita very carefully chooses those elements in all these three which are conducive to its own view of things. And that is, it wants knowledge, it wants also love and devotion, bhakti, and it also wants you to work in the physical world and not reject it. Okay? So this is the chapter that we are going to read now. So let's read. Okay? So who read just now? Sunki read. So next, it's a very small para. Archana, will you read?
Yes, Rangada.
Okay, go ahead, read the para.
Sankhya, Yoga and Vedanta. The whole object of the first 6 chapters of the Gita is to synthesize in a large frame of Vedantic truth the two methods, ordinarily supposed to be diverse and even opposite, of the Sankhyas and the Yogins. The Sankhya is taken as the starting point and the basis, but it is from the beginning and with a progressively increasing emphasis permeated with the ideas and methods of yoga and remolded in its spirit. The practical difference, as it seems to have presented itself to the religious mind of that day, lay first in this that Sankhya proceeded by knowledge and through the yoga of the intelligence, while yoga proceeded by works and the transformation of the active consciousness, and secondly, a corollary of this first distinction, that Sankhya led to entire passivity and the renunciation of work, sannyas, while yoga held to be quite sufficient the inner renunciation of desire, the purification of the subjective principle which leads to action and the turning of work Godwards towards the divine existence and towards liberation. Yet both had the same aim, the transcendence of birth and of this terrestrial existence, and the union of the human soul with the highest. This at least is the difference as it is presented to us by the Gita.
Yeah. So the first paragraph is combining Sankhya and Karma Yoga. It is combining. Gita is combining, although they seem to be opposites. In the Sankhya, you are plunged in Prakriti, you are identified with body, mind, life, that is Prakriti, and you have to get rid of this identification and identify yourself with the Purusha, which is above, in the level 2, in the spiritual planes of consciousness. When that happens, you feel yourself to be outside the body, mind, life, and you see the body, mind, life as mechanically acting. It is true that it acts mechanically, and now you are only watching. That's the Sankhya method. The yoga method is slightly different, the Karma Yoga. You use the works in the physical world as a training ground. But ultimately, after you have reached the self or the Atman or the Brahman consciousness, you don't pay attention to the physical world. That's a Karma Yoga. Okay? So that's what. So there's a slight difference, but Gita will say that you, after getting the liberation also and the Brahman consciousness, you don't need to go away from the physical world. And that becomes possible if you have a relation with the divine. And the relation of the divine is necessarily through bhakti. In the Jnana Yoga, there is only Jnana. There is no relation. You become the vast infinite. Okay? You become that. There is nobody else. So there is no question of bhakti. In the Sankhya philosophy, actually Sri Aurobindo says that at the highest level, there is personality as well as impersonality. Even though it seems impossible that one can love, one can exist love, but there's only one. He says that it's a miracle of the divine. Okay, even if you are identified with the divine, you can have the experience of love. And that Indian philosophy accounts for, because, as I said, there are various, there is the Shankaran philosophy which is attributed to only knowledge. Then there is the Ramanujam theory which says that yes, it is true that the divine is the individual soul essentially, but they can also have a relationship. Okay. And the third philosophy which says a relationship with the divine is possible, Madhvacharya and Nimbarkar. She says relation with the divine is possible. You can have a relation with the divine, but you can't become the divine. And that is also there in the Islam as well as in Christianity. You can't become the divine, impossible, because you are limited. And the divine is infinite, unlimited. But the Indian philosophy says the limited individuality is actually the ego. The real individuality can become infinite. So it combines. So I'll read each sentence. It's very simple. This is the basic idea. The whole object of the first 6 chapters, Sri Aurobindo divides the 18 chapters of the Gita into 3 sections. The first 6 chapters, then the next 6 chapters, and then the last 6 chapters. Okay. He divides it in that way. We will see that later on also. Now he is talking about the first 6 chapters. The whole object of the first 6 chapters of the Gita is to synthesize in a large frame of Vedantic truth. Okay. You are insisting on the Vedantic truth. And remember that the Vedanta also accounts for Bhakti Yoga. Okay. So, large frame of Vedantic truth. The 2 methods. Which are the 2 methods? Karma Yoga and Sankhya. Ordinarily supposed to be diverse and even opposite of the Sankhyas and the Yogins. The Sankhya is taken as a starting point and the basis. The starting point is that there is a Purusha and there is a Prakriti, which is true. There is a soul and there is your outer nature, body, mind, life. The body, mind, life is mechanical, governed at level 1, and your soul is inside and prisoner of body, mind, life. So you have to free the Purusha. You have to get out of the prison of body, mind, life, and that's the goal of Sankhya, as well as Mayavadins and the Advaita philosophy. Freeing yourself is common to everyone, but after that there are divergences. Okay, so Sankhya is taken as a starting point and the basis, but it is from the beginning and with a progressively increasing emphasis permeated with the ideas and methods of yoga. Okay, this is in the Gita. Okay, it's permeated, it is absorbed, it is permeated means to percolate into. Okay, with the ideas and methods of yoga, karma yoga, and remolded in its spirit. So Sankhya is taken and a little bit of arm twisting is done. Okay, and you are saying that even Prakriti can be used to go to the Purusha. Whereas the Sankhya is saying get rid of Prakriti and go to Purusha, the Karma Yoga is saying, and the Gita also agrees with that, is saying that you can use Prakriti and go to Sankhya. You don't need to reject it. Okay. The Sankhya is taken as a starting point and the basis. But it is from the beginning and with a progressively increasing emphasis permeated with the ideas and methods of yoga, that is Karma Yoga, and remolded in its spirit, in the spirit of the Karma Yoga. Use the works in the physical world as an offering, and even your works, although they are limiting you and your works in the physical world are encouraging you to have desire and attachment, okay, still you can use them. That's what the Gita is saying. The practical difference, as it seems to have presented itself to the religious minds of that day, okay, in the past, lay first in this, that Sankhya proceeded by knowledge and through the yoga of the intelligence. Okay, you identify yourself with the yoga of the intelligence, buddhi, and that buddhi is the higher buddhi, not the lower buddhi, while yoga, karma yoga, proceeded by works. You concentrate on your works, and how do you combine them? You offer your work to the divine and don't do it for yourself. When you don't do it for yourself, when you do it for the divine, ego will slowly disappear. So that is the process of Karma Yoga. But once you have managed to get rid of your ego and you have identified yourself with the Brahman consciousness, then you don't need to work anymore. That's it, Karma Yoga. And the transformation of the active consciousness, the body mind life is the active consciousness, because the Brahman consciousness is inactive consciousness. And secondly, a corollary of the first distinction. The word corollary is very clear. In mathematics, we use that all the time. There is a secondary aspect, is a corollary. Okay? You have a main thesis, and there are implications of that thesis, which is a corollary. A corollary of the first distinction, that Sankhya led to entire passivity and the renunciation of works, sannyasa. Okay? While yoga held to be quite sufficient the inner renunciation of desire, the purification of the subjective principle, and lead to action, which leads to action and the turning of works Godwards, towards a divine existence and towards liberation. Let's have a look at this sentence a little carefully. The Sankhya led to entire passivity. In other words, your Brahman, your soul, your consciousness, which is entering the Brahman consciousness, becomes absolutely passive, immutable, silent, and you are only watching. Knowledge is there, sight is there, but you are only watching, you are not doing anything. Who is doing? The body, mind, life. Okay, that is going on mechanically, and you see that. You realize that you are not the doer of works. The doer of works is nature, universal nature. Just like the tree is growing, it is acting, but it is universal nature which is making it act. The tree is not growing by its own will. Same thing also applies to the human being, but because the human being has an ego, he thinks that he is doing, which is absolutely an illusion. He is not doing anything. Okay? He has to escape from there. So, the word sannyasa, okay, we'll discuss that later on. There are two types of sannyasas. So we're just mentioning here a little bit. Okay, renunciation of works. Don't do any work at all. Okay, if you do works in the physical world, that's the idea in the Sankhya and the Mayavada. Then if you do works, you will necessarily get desire and you will necessarily get attachment. So why do that? Okay, so largely true, but not absolutely true. You can do works without desire. That's possible. That's a Gita's solution. So that Sankhya led to entire passivity and the renunciation of work, sannyasa, while yoga held to be quite sufficient the inner renunciation of desire. In the Sankhya, don't do any works. Okay, don't take a job. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't do anything in the physical world. Okay, get rid of all the physical work. But in the Karma Yoga, you have to cut the link in your mind with the desire to do works. If you cut the desire in the mind, then whether you are doing work or not does not make any difference. And how do you do that? By offering your work itself to the divine. Then slowly, naturally, you are not doing anything for yourself. The ego slowly fritters away and dissolves and goes away. And when the ego goes away, the way is clear for your identification with Brahman consciousness. The ego is the main problem. And the ego is what? Identification with body, mind, life. That is ego. Okay? So in Jnana Yoga, or rather in Sankhya, which is Jnana Yoga of a sort, you don't do any work physically as far as possible. Naturally, you have to eat, you have to sleep. Okay, you can't help. But that's all, minimum, what they call Sharira Yatra. So the works that are demanded by the Sharira Yatra for maintaining the body, that much only you do. Don't do anything else. Go on meditating, concentrating, and getting rid of your identification with body, mind, life. But the Karma Yoga is saying, no, you can do the works, but offer them to the divine. Then the link will get cut. So try constantly to cut the inner desire. And that is possible by offering the works to the divine. The purification of the subjective principle. Which is a subjective principle? They use the word antahkarana, okay, as opposed to the outer instrumentation, which is the body. The subjective principle is your vital and your mind, and the objective principle is your body. Okay, so when Sridhar uses the word subjective principle, he is meaning in Sanskrit you use the word antahkarana. Antahkarana means the inner instrumentation. And what is that? It's a little more detailed than what Sridhar says. It is mano, buddhi, ahankara, chitta, not the body. Mana, okay, and buddhi, ahankara, ego is also part of that because it's mental. And chitta, chitta is a vital consciousness. Okay, this is the antahkarana, subjective principle, which leads to action and the turning of works Godwards, towards the divine existence and towards liberation. Yet both had the same aim. And what is that aim? Get to the Purusha consciousness and get rid of Prakriti, ultimately. Okay, that's right. Aim, same aim. And what is that? The transcendence of birth. And what does birth imply? Coming down into the physical world. If you transcend birth, you don't need to come down anymore into the physical world. Okay? And of this terrestrial existence, transcendence of birth and terrestrial existence, and the union of the human soul with the highest. This, at least, is the difference as it is presented to us by the Gita. There may be other differences, but this much we limit ourselves to. The Gita is just saying this much. Okay? So, we can now read the next one. So, here Sridhar has not yet brought in the Advaita. Okay, Vedanta he has not brought in. He is only discussing Sankhya and Karma Yoga. Now we go to the next para. The difficulty with the Arjuna. Who will read? Pallavi can read. Today I see that.
Yes, Rangada.
Yeah, I see that Tarika is not there today. Doesn't matter. Pallu can read.
She's not well, I think.
Oh, that's why. The difficulty.
The difficulty which Arjuna feels in understanding any possible synthesis of these oppositions is an indication of the hard line that was driven in between these two systems in the normal ideas of the time. The teacher sets out by reconciling works and the yoga of the intelligence. The latter, he says, is far superior to mere works. It is by the yoga of the buddhi, by knowledge, raising men out of the ordinary human mind and its desires into the purity and equality of the Brahmanic condition, free from all desire, that works can be made acceptable. Yet are works a means of salvation, but works thus purified by knowledge. Filled with the notions of the then prevailing culture, misled by the emphasis which the teacher lays upon the ideas proper to the Vedantic Sankhya, conquest of the senses, withdrawal from the mind into the self, ascent into the Brahmic condition, extinction of our lower personality in the nirvana of impersonality. For the ideas proper to yoga are as yet subordinated and largely held back. Arjuna is perplexed and asks, if thou holdest the intelligence to be greater than works, why then dost thou appoint me to a terrible work? Thou seemest to bewilder my intelligence with a confused and mingled speech. Tell me then decisively that one thing by which I may attain to my soul's will.
Yeah. Okay. So now he is coming back to the Gitas. What Arjuna is going to ask Sri Krishna. The difficulty which Arjuna feels in understanding any possible synthesis of these oppositions is an indication of the hard line that was driven in between the two systems in the normal ideas of the time. We can also say of that time, okay? In the earlier, when the Gita was written. The Gita was written 5,000 years ago. At that time, the two systems were, one was get rid of body, mind, life and go to the soul, go to your Atman. And the other was, no, Not get rid of your, continue to work in the physical world and use the lower instrumentation to climb to the higher. So they seem to be opposites. And that was the great difference between the two systems at that time. Now the Gita is saying, wait, they can be combined. Okay? And that combination is what is puzzling Arjuna. How can I give up works and yet do works in the physical world? How is that possible? That's what he's asking. You can't do both. You can't give up the works in the physical world and yet do physical works. How to do that? The teacher then sets out by reconciling works and the yoga of the intelligence. And how does he do that? By saying that the body-mind life can continue to work, but your soul can escape into a silence and an immutability, and then the soul is not working, but the body-mind life continues to work. And who decides what the body-mind life is going to do? The Supreme. Not your mental being, but the Supreme. He will decide what you have to do. That is the solution. The teacher sets out by reconciling works and the yoga of the intelligence. Okay. The latter, he says, the latter is the yoga of the intelligence. The latter, he says, is far superior to mere works. Okay. The latter, the yoga of the intelligence, he says is far superior to mere works. That means the Jnana Yoga, okay, is a far better than the other one. It is by the yoga of the Buddhi, by knowledge, raising man out of the ordinary human mind into, and its desires into the purity and equality of Brahmic consciousness, free from all desire that works can be made acceptable. So, rise to the Brahmic consciousness, and then even the works can be made acceptable. Yet, are works a means of salvation? You can use the works as a scaffolding, for instance. Okay, once the building is built, you don't need the scaffolding anymore. So that is what is being said by the Gita. Yet are works a means of salvation, but works thus purified by knowledge. Once your consciousness has risen to the self, you have knowledge. If you are identified with the body-mind life, there is no knowledge, you are only ignorance. So go up to the higher level and then you can do the work, because there is no, the works are not going to attach. They are not going to give you attachment and desire. Okay? That will remain at the lower level, but you are free. Filled with the notions of the then prevailing culture, misled by the emphasis which the teacher lays upon the ideas proper to Vedantic Sankhya, conquest of the senses, withdrawal from mind into the self, ascent into the Brahmic consciousness, extinction of our lower personality in the nirvana of impersonality, for the ideas proper to yoga are as yet subordinated and largely held back. Arjuna is perplexed and asks, if thou holdest the intelligence to be greater than works. So what is the meaning? He's saying that Jnana Yoga is superior to Karma Yoga because it gives you knowledge. So then he is asking, if that is there, why then dost thou appoint me to a terrible work? You are asking me not to do any work, and yet you are asking me to do work. Thou seemest to bewilder my intelligence with a confused and mingled speech. Your speech is very confusing. You are asking me to do both. How is that possible? Tell me then decisively that one thing by which I may attain to my soul's weal. What is weal? Welfare, prosperity, my interest, okay? My beneficial, what is useful to me, what is my happy condition, okay? What will be of great use to me, my weal, my good fortune. So this is what Sri is. So Krishna is telling him that you have to do both, and he is confused. So Arjuna is asking, tell me one thing. I don't want both the things. How is that possible? So we read the next one. What's the time? 25. We've got 10 minutes. One more para we can read. In answer, Krishna affirms. So, Jasmine, you can read, na?
Yes, please.
Go ahead. In answer, Sri Krishna affirms.
In answer, Krishna affirms that the Sankhya goes by knowledge and renunciation, the yoga by works. But the real renunciation is impossible without yoga, without works done as a sacrifice, done with equality and without desire of the fruit, with the perception that it is nature which does the action and not the soul. But immediately afterwards, he declares that the sacrifice of knowledge is the highest. All work finds its consummation in knowledge. By the fire of knowledge, all works are burnt up. Therefore, by yoga, works are renounced and their bondage overcome for the man who is in possession of his self. Again, Arjuna is perplexed. Here are desireless works, the principle of yoga, the renunciation of works, the principle of Sankhya, put together side by side as if part of one method. Yet, there is no evident reconciliation between them. For the kind of reconciliation which the teacher has already given, in outward action to see action still persisting, and in apparent action to see a real inaction, since the soul has renounced its illusion of the worker and given up works into the hands of the master of sacrifice. Is for the practical mind of Arjuna too slight, too subtle, and expressed almost in riddling words. He has not caught their sense, or at least not penetrated into their spirit and reality. Therefore, he asks again, Thou declarest to me the renunciation of works, O Krishna, and again thou declarest to me yoga. Which one of this is the better way? That tell me with a clear decisiveness.
So he is still confused. He doesn't know how to do works and yet do feel that you are not doing works. So this is the difference between the two. For us it is very clear, but in the practical field Arjuna is having difficulty in adjusting to the two things. One is you do the works in the physical world when you have an ego and you think that you are doing. So what Sri Krishna is meaning is do the works, but don't have ego and don't get to the, you have to get to the knowledge that you are not the doer. You have to go to the Purusha. And when you go to the Purusha, you will realize that you are not doing, the universal nature is doing the works. So we have got 6 minutes. So we'll go through each sentence. It's very simple because it's a repeated idea. No? In answer, Krishna affirms that the Sankhya goes by knowledge and renunciation, the yoga by works. Sankhya is saying don't do work, and yoga, karma yoga is doing do works and use the works as a stepping stone. Use it as a springboard. Okay. The Sankhya says no. No. The moment you act, you will have attachment and desire. So don't act. There is a truth to that, but it's not absolute truth. Okay. So, without works, but the real renunciation is impossible without yoga, without karma yoga, without works done as a sacrifice. You have to do the work as a sacrifice. You do it for the Lord and not for yourself. Done with equality and without desire of the fruit. Okay, nishkama karma. Do the work you have to do the best of your ability, but don't put your aim on the result. Leave the result to the Lord. With desire of the fruit, with the perception that it is nature which does the actions. You are not doing the action, but the nature is doing, so leave it to her, and not the soul. But immediately afterwards, he declares that the sacrifice of knowledge is the best. Okay? Even knowledge has to be sacrifice. The sacrifice of knowledge is the best. Knowledge is the workplace. All work finds its consummation in knowledge. By the fire of knowledge, all works are burnt. Okay? This is the in chapter 3. It is there. Jnana yogena, sankhena, karma yogena, yogina. These are the two. So, where is it gone? Yeah. But immediately afterwards he declares that the sacrifice of knowledge is the best. All work finds its consummation in knowledge. By the fire, by the fire of knowledge, all works are burnt up. Jnanagnina dagdha, he says. Okay, by the fire of knowledge, everything gets burnt up. Therefore, by yoga, works are renounced and their bondage overcome for the man who is in possession of his self. Again, Arjuna is perplexed. Here are desireless works. Okay, you do the work without desire. The principle of yoga and the renunciation of works, the principle of Sankhya, put together side by side as if part of one method. Yet there is no evident reconciliation between them. For the kind of reconciliation which the teacher has already given in outward inaction to see action, still persisting in an apparent action, and to see a real inaction, since the soul has renounced its illusion of the worker and given up works into the hands of the master of sacrifice, is for the practical mind of Arjuna too slight, too subtle, and expressed almost in riddling words. It's a riddle, okay? That means to say, you are, the body-mind life is continuing to do, but you know that you are not doing, okay? The inner connection in your mind is cut. You are not doing works by desire, nor are you doing it by your own motives. There is no motive and there is no wanting fruits of the works. So this is too difficult for Arjuna to understand. The renunciation of works in the mind. So he has not caught their sense, or at least not penetrated into the spirit and reality. Therefore he asks again, thou declarest to me the renunciation of works, which is Sankhya, O Krishna, and again thou declarest to me yoga, do the work. Okay? Which one of these is the better way? That tell me with a clear decisiveness. Okay? Chapter 5, verse 1, this is what he is asking. Okay. So today we can stop here, only 2 minutes more. And so now again the combining of all the three methods. So what is the method in the Gita? To make it very, very short, you have to use the works as a stepping stone, as a springboard. Use the works. And how do you use the work? Don't do it for yourself. Do it for the Lord. And it's very obvious that if you are doing it for somebody else and you're not doing for yourself, the importance of yourself, the ego, slowly will disappear. That's the way of the Gita. So, nishkama karma and desireless works. Renunciation in the mind, not in the physical world, but in the mind. Cut the link between desire and attachment and continue to do the work. This is the solution of the Gita. Okay, we'll stop here today.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay, au revoir everybody.
Thank you, Rangada.
Merci, Rangada. Bonne journée.
Bonne journée, same to everybody. Au revoir and have a nice day.